Welcome to the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad. My name is Chris Finn, and I'm your host. And today I'm excited. I have a guest from across the pond, Carlo Ciullo. He is, if you don't know him, you definitely need to check out his Instagram and his YouTube. I like the longer form, but most of you listening are the attention span is not that long, so Instagram is a great place to go. But Carlo is a PGA fellow coach, and he has been coaching for over a decade. I first came across him on Instagram, and the instructional videos, the quality, the value add. If you guys are looking for help and just understanding, just how to get better at the game, Carlo is a phenomenal resource for you. So Carlo, welcome to the show. Excited to have you on, man.
Hey, thanks for the intro.
Yeah, man. I always like to start. Oh, sorry, go ahead. We're a little delayed. We're both not in our normal studios here, just for all you guys listening. So, but Carlo, I always love to kind of selfishly just hear the origin story, man. As an entrepreneur myself, and knowing kind of what it takes to build something. You've built a pretty cool, pretty substantial following. Your experiential, working with tour players, from novices, like you don't get to tour players without knowing your stuff. So talk about your journey a little bit for everybody who maybe isn't as familiar as you and how and how you've gotten to where you are.
So you just obviously starting from a big love of golf, at a young age. I didn't play to a crazy level as an amateur, and then got a little bit better later on in my later teen years, and then just started playing professionally through the PGA, and I had a little bit of time on the Euro Pro, which is a development tour out here. But alongside that, I was always doing the PGA, so I was always coaching full time. The obvious battle of fighting and playing between playing and coaching. But I've always enjoyed coaching, always enjoyed the interaction with people, making a difference. And when I still play a little, but really just continuing on the journey to becoming a better coach.
That's awesome. And obviously working with an array of students from, maybe, obviously not tour pros to the average guy listening right now.
I have had experience kind of in and around a couple of, lower tier tour professionals, but primarily I'm at a club, so I'll be coaching low single figure golfers, every range, every age and every range, day to day.
So, and that's honestly, that's most of who's listening, to our show and in our audience and who's looking for help. And I'm always curious, for us on the fitness side, I'm a big believer in, assess, don't guess, like go in with an actual plan and fix what actually needs to be fixed. Don't just, throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and hope something sticks for somebody. How do you, when you get, that amateur player coming to you for help, how do you kind of approach them and kind of, what should they look for from a good coach in terms of how to know where to go?
From a fitness point of view?
No. This is funny. This is the funny part of our show. It's a fitness show, but I actually like talking more about the golf.
Well,
so when you have a student come in, how do you approach, how you help them?
I think it's first of all just understanding, what sort of golfer they are, whether they are the business guy or woman who's going to probably just tee it up at 10 o'clock on a Saturday and not think about it again all week, which you get a lot of. Or, you've got that really keen, eager guy who's out there watching every video under the sun. So it's really just trying to understand the individual before you go in and down any certain path. Because obviously that player who is not going to have any form of practice at all, which is not a problem. We all enjoy the game. You're definitely just going to give less information. It's almost going to be a lot more of a quick fix sort of session. Make them feel good. Give them something that they can then, when they're out there on the golf course, they've got a memory or a feel, and it's something as simple as that. Yeah. So it's all down to the individual that I'm coaching on the day, really.
And let's take that. People who are listening to a fitness podcast are generally they're willing to put some work in. So for that guy who's a little more eager, a little more keen to like do the work, how do you approach helping a guy like that when they come to you on the tee?
I think it's creating a bit of clarity with them understanding what their faults are or what it is that they're frustrated with. Because inevitably, a lot of the time, someone has already gone down the route of finding a lot of stuff on YouTube or social media, or they've seen somebody else, and so you often find this kind of a lot going on already. So he's trying to get them to understand what it is that they're struggling with, then understanding the principles around that, whether that is I'm slicing the ball and we question back and forth of, understanding which components of the swing are creating that. And then obviously we'll put a plan together. But first of all, it's getting to just to clear the head and get down one road really.
And when somebody does come, like, out here, slicing is a big, thing a lot of amateurs deal with, for the slice. And obviously some people will deal with hooking the ball. How do you tend to diagnose kind of what's going on there and help them? I think a lot of people, they'll search like how to fix my slice. Like there's one reason why they're slicing. I'm assuming there's not just one, but if somebody does have come to you with a problem like that, how do you kind of go about helping them figure that out?
I mean, first of all, with some demonstration, getting them to understand the obvious. For most club golfers, it all comes back to the impact factors of face and path, the relationship between the face and path. So it may start with me just doing some demonstrations and linking it to a familiar sport for that student. I'll always ask if they've played any other racket sports or football, soccer here in the UK, and how they promote spin onto a ball in those sports. So getting them to understand that, first of all, it's a lot easier visually, and just through the movement pattern for them to understand. And then obviously we'll link to the awareness of what their club faces tended to do in the golf swing. So it all predominantly comes back to club face. So if I do have a slicer, I think it's quite old school in the way of trying to get them to hit the opposite shape.
Yeah.
Getting them comfortable, first of all, to do something that feels really strange. I think that's a big thing. Because obviously the mass of the club head, if we're changing the alignment of the face, things start feeling totally different. But it's giving them that comfort of let's play around with this for a minute. Let's explore what positions of the face create different sort of shapes. Then we'll start kind of dialing a little bit more.
Cool. Yeah, I was saying, I noticed like on your website you do TrackMan, you use technology. So how do you? I think this is a common challenge. I think a lot of our single digit kind of avid guys deal with is a lot of them always want to use technology. Most of them have no idea how to freaking use it. How do you determine? You talked about kind of being a little old school, maybe, hey, hit some draws, or at what point do you tie in the technology? Is it different based on the person, or how do you use that kind of as a feedback tool or a training tool?
It all depends on how they're getting on. TrackMan's great. We've got it at the golf club, at Brough Golf Club. Certain things I like to do is you obviously don't want to go too far off on how many data panels you use. But let's say there is a slice with the golf ball, I will often take the screen off and put 3 numbers on, where you've got your face and your path and your face to path relationship. So we may just play around with the idea of not trying to see a ball flight and not trying to necessarily see a strike, but can you create a number that looks different to the numbers you were creating? So they obviously start, and it's all in play and just exploring really. So that's one way I will use TrackMan. It's probably one of the most common things I'll do, but taking the student away from just looking at the ball flight all the time and actually looking at the basic numbers, and it's often only just a couple of numbers.
Sure. Yeah, I think we see that all the time on the on the physical side, we do tons of data, and I mean, we could literally paralyze somebody with the amount of data. And the TrackMan's the same way, and I think it's important that you cut that down to a couple. That's the biggest thing I see golfers struggle with, is they'll go in to a place that has a flight scope or a TrackMan or whatever it may be, and they're looking at 30 different numbers, and you're like, dude, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, yeah.
Tricky. I mean, one of the great things also with that with TrackMan itself is that you can actually, play around and keep it quite creative in the session, can't you? You can go to the driving range and you can put them behind the tree, so you have that ability to not just stay in the same spot hitting the same shot. So keeping it creative and just finding new ways of getting the same point across, I think is a big thing. So we all know that a common saying is, I've never drawn a ball in my life.
Yeah.
Drawn a ball in my life, and really we kind of know it's not. It's one shot away, really. If you let go and let yourself feel something different.
Right.
So yeah, TrackMan's great, but you do get students who do. They almost know far too much that they don't need to know.
Yeah, they know so much they're dangerous.
And I actually find that a lot of golfers actually. I don't know if it's just my area, but they prefer to be out, like on the course and actually being out there. So it's always tricky, kind of marrying the two together, because if you're out there on the golf course trying to solve a slice in between
It's a little tough.
4 balls, it's kind of like let's go inside.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's have a half hour on the spot thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Every lesson's a kind of a different situation. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think that's the mark of a great instructor, is that there isn't one cookie cutter solution, that you got to go different, different solutions for different people, and even the same person, and maybe different solutions at different times. And I think, to me, that's one of the biggest, pitfalls I think a lot of guys fall into, is they go to somebody who just teaches one move or one method or what, and they maybe, and they actually a lot of times get worse. I mean, I'm sure.
Same in the fitness world, yeah. Different kind of, obviously different types of exercise, and yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think that's to me the what I enjoy the most about talking with instructors like yourself is and hopefully drawing for our listeners the parallels between the fitness side and the instructional side. And I think for a lot of golfers, the instructional side is a little more concrete, a little more experienced, particularly for our single digit players that you guys have taken lessons, you've used a TrackMan, right? You've hopefully done what Carlos talking about, have somebody who, hey, just focus on these couple things on a device, but then also you can't have the device when you're playing in a tournament, so you got to figure out what do you do on a golf course. And the same is true fitness wise, of understanding what your body needs, particularly throughout the life of a golfer. An 18-year-old versus a 68-year-old, your bodies are going to move different, right? The physical demands of the golf swing don't change, but if you want to swing 100 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour is 100 miles an hour, and there's physical requirements to do that safely. And whether you're 68 or you're 18, the physical requirements don't change. Maybe the work that a 68-year-old has to put into their body to swing 100 miles an hour is more so than what an 18-year-old needs to do. But and you got some people maybe who can create speed from elasticity, some people who can create it from strength, and some people are hypermobile, some people move like a door. So,
would you test that if you had a student come to you for that very thing of more speed? Is that a case of you start by testing all those different angles of what sort of student you have with in front of you?
Yes, and this is an awesome conversation, because for us, we will look at for those of you who've been listening, you've heard of me talk about what we call safe swing speed predictor. So based on all the data, what we do, we get somebody in. I always think of, as a good visual for people, I think of like a pizza pie, right? Think of a circle, and there's kind of four. If we want to get speed, there's kind of 4 areas we can go. On the physical side, we can go to basically kind of mobility, as kind of think of that as a quarter, right? Do you have the mobility to get from point A to point B to create the speed safely? The other quarter would be, do you have the ability, the strength to produce the power, right? So can you produce the force? Then your other two quarters are more, your instructional, your technique, efficiency. Obviously, you can create speed by doing that, and that's where obviously you come in with Carlo. And then the other is going to be equipment based, right? And that's for us on the fitness side. We always talk about we're experts in that bottom quarter, or the bottom half, I guess, right? But I think the important thing for all of you listening is to have an instructor and a fitness person, and the instructor, maybe they're a fitter as well, but people that understand enough across all four of those quarters to say, when we get somebody who say, hey, your mobility is great, your strength is actually, physically you should be able to swing 115 miles an hour, but you're only producing 100 miles an hour club head speed. Well, it's not me that you need to be seeing. Whether maybe instructionally you're losing speed from a technical efficiency standpoint, and maybe that you're using clubs that are completely wrong for you. And I think that's a lot of times though what we get is when people want speed, the data is 95% of amateur golfers over the age of 30 don't have the mobility rotary wise to swing as fast as they're swinging safely, and they're what we call a ticking time bomb, right? Where the likelihood that they're going to hurt themselves is pretty high, and it's definitely very common in single digit players because they're very good technically. They're way more efficient, right? They probably have the right clubs, and the physical becomes a big element of speed issue for them. But I'm curious, Carlo, for you, obviously we talked about how you'll work with people in person. I know I see on your website you work with people online. This is actually a topic I've been hoping to get somebody who does some online coaching and kind of has some experience there, because it's an avenue that a lot of players are pursuing. It opens up for players a world of coaches, not just their local pros. For a student who's looking to work with somebody online, for you as the instructor, what are the pros? Are there any cons? Kind of how do you approach that, and what should somebody look for when they do try somebody online?
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a prolific online coach. I do coach online, and I've had all over the world, but it's not something I've kind of got 6 or 7 hours a day set aside to.
Right.
I think that I think there are a lot of pros. We can do this, first of all.
Yeah.
And I'm always trying to streamline and make things better from my side. So I'm going to try and adapt to having a sit down half hour with the student before we do anything within the swing, so we can still converse. I think there's the element of, you've got all the data there. You've got all your videos. You've got all your references. All your backlog of lessons and you've got that structure there. So I think from that point of view, it's great. I mean, it's almost as good as an in-person lesson, because you get people go away, and I do send recaps in in-person lessons, but only really when we are in the studio and we're on TrackMan.
Yep.
So every lesson is you have the feedback. Ultimately, you can't see how someone goes away and practices. I don't actually do any of the live stuff, which I potentially could get into a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it's always the same, and it's the same issues as in person. It's what does people do when they go away, so you can't monitor that. That's the biggest probably downfall of it. But I do think there's a lot of positivity around it, and again, I don't do a huge amount of it, so you are probably speaking to the wrong coach.
What we've seen, we have a big remote program we do virtually, 1,000+ people that we work with remotely, and we don't do live. Well, we do Zoom calls, right, where we talk to them one-on-one, and if somebody wants to go through a workout in person, we'll do it. But I'd say the predominant way that people leverage the virtual side of it is that it can be asynchronous, right? And that's, I think, convenient for a lot of people, and that works for them, and they can get feedback in real time, where, hey, here's, for us on the fitness side, hey, here's my squat pattern. How's it look? Hey, we can give feedback or my mobility or whatever it may be. Instructionally, I think it's, I would imagine it's the same thing. In a way, it's funny for us on the remote side, we almost joke that sometimes our remote coaches actually have more interaction with their clients than the guy who comes in maybe twice a week, right? The guy comes in twice a week, you get an hour with him twice a week, and then you don't really hear from him, right?
Yeah,
Versus the remote client, you're texting back and forth. It can be kind of interesting.
it depends on the individual for me, because you do get, someone who's really, really, really keen on improving. And I've worked with on the Skilly Stat before, and obviously had it as a monthly subscription, unlimited kind of lessons and contact, and you will get, I've had some people who are, really on the ball, and every day, every
Yeah.
couple of days back, and and I'm as passionate as anybody, so I'm guilty of, I'm always kind of on my phone messaging people, looking at swings, and I'll go along with it. I'm like, this kid's keen. This kid wants to learn.
Yeah.
And you'll get, on the flip side, I've had people who've had monthly subscriptions, and I'm not, we've sent the 5 or 6 videos across and a plan, and
Radio
once
silence.
months kind of checking in. So yeah, I mean, I get that. I get that in person as well. It's someone books a kind of 45-minute lesson, and within 10 minutes they're kind of comfortable. Like, yeah, I've got what I need. I'm trying to end the session.
Yeah.
So it's great. It's great to be able to have.
For sure. It is. Yeah. No, I think that's the beauty of technology and where we've come is it. Yeah, I think it allows us to adapt to more and more types of people. But yeah, I think the last thing I'd love to cover with you, Carlo, would be on the physical side for you when somebody comes to the tee box, and how does somebody's what they're able to physically do impact what you will maybe prioritize with them, or how you'll teach with them, whether they can move or they can't move, whatever it may be. But like, how do you approach somebody's physicality, and how does that potentially influence how you work with them?
I mean, I have a kind of basic understanding of the biomechanics, but there are times where, I mean, just to pick out the hat, let's say someone who's super steep and they really don't. It's often a rugby player. They don't have any
Shoulder external rotation. Yep.
and apart from telling them to turn the club around and swing left-handed, so they can.
Yeah.
We'll have to look at different avenues, and I will advise them to say, look, there's a series of tests that you can carry out, such as the 90-90 test, and but there is situations where I say, look, you've got a big slice, and you've got a steepening of the club, and you're throwing the club, and predominantly coming from the shoulder. We'll look at a couple of ways, maybe that strengthening the club face and shallowing it through the body. But often I will advise them to go and see physiotherapist, and obviously take it from there. But you've got to be careful, haven't you? You've got to be careful on that front. I mean, the most common physical limitation that I see is kind of in the hamstring area, that kind of golfer that dumps the bum back and kind of sits in the heels, and I always feel comfortable giving information on that, loosening up and trying to feel a little bit more through the balls of the feet, giving them a few exercises. But yeah, anything more in depth, I tell them to go and see somebody who's qualified.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's an important thing for everybody to hear, is if you're working with somebody who's kind of trying to be a one-stop shop on either side, whether on the instructional side, the fitness side, like, probably not the person that you want to be with. You want somebody who's looking to get you to the right people, to get you better, working with a team. And Carlo, like us, is very similar minded in that, some simple stuff like, hey man, like for us, my favorite's always get somebody physically, they're able to swing, they should be able to swing, let's say 115, they're swinging 100, and you look at their club, and their club literally is bending because the shaft is so soft, and it's like a U, and you're like, hey man, I don't know what shaft you need, but I'm going to guess that's not the one. And I'm going to guess if we get you the right club, that may help a little bit. And so I think that's an important piece for everyone to hear is whether you're with an instructor or you're getting fit or you're in the fitness world, having somebody who understands the whole pie and can help to direct you. Because I think you said in the beginning, Carlo, we get some guys now that, I mean, information is so rampant everywhere. You get guys that almost know too much, right? And they don't know how to disseminate the good stuff from the bad stuff. And so I think looking for guys like Carlo, particularly on the instructional side, who can help you to figure out what is good and what you should be paying attention to and what maybe you can kind of ignore. So, but Carlo, I think to kind of leave everybody here, what would, if you could kind of give some, that single digit guy who is, really kind of keen on getting better, willing to put the work in, if you kind of had kind of one, I don't know, say one tip, but like words of wisdom or kind of philosophy that you've seen to kind of really kind of help those guys accomplish getting to that next level of, going from a high single to a low single, whatever it may be, what would that kind of be, on the golf side?
Ooh. Tough. I mean, I think that first of all, you've got to be honest with yourself as a golfer and like be able to analyze, your game and your route. We get people who say, my short game's good, I'm comfortable with my short game, and you have to have that ability to analyze your round and know where you are really dropping shots. So it's always obviously you've got all different elements of the game. You've got your putting, your chipping, your pitching. So if you split those up, almost if you've got a sheet of paper and you split all those areas up, and you said, how have I performed on these over the year? And you was brutally honest, because it's not just one individual thing. It's especially when you get to that lower level of I'm a 6 handicap golfer and I'm trying to get to 3.
Yeah.
I think driver's always the scapegoat for everybody. I missed the fairway too many times, and it's like, well, you can miss the fairway. There's probably something more obvious to work on. So I think first, being just brutally honest with your game, breaking it down into the sections of and seeing how you performed over the year, and then taking it from there. From a technical point of view, it always comes back down to impact. I know we're playing in a lot of pro-ams and a lot of low handicap golfers, like 4 or 5 handicappers, and just needing more and more control over the impact factors of ball, turf, low point, face control, which ultimately leads to a more consistent ball flight. I think it was John Jacobs that said, "Ball flight never lies." So I think that's what I see good players do.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, it goes back to everybody that, assessing. And so it sounds like for that better golfer listening right now, learning how to assess themselves in terms of where they need to focus their time and be honest.
I think so. I think good players go away and they're always kind of ticking through the holes that they've played from the 2 weeks before, and kind of small. The margins are so small, aren't they? And the decision making out on the golf course is huge, and just. But I think that's why we love the game, because it's so hard to pinpoint, isn't it?
Oh, it's so hard. It's the most frustrating, greatest game in the world. Cool. Well, Carlo, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And for people that want to check you out on YouTube, on Instagram, what's the best place? How do they find you? What are the handles?
Just at Carlo Ciullo Golf, Instagram, YouTube. There you go.
Perfect.
Hopefully find some value in the tips.
Yeah, and your website, right? carlociullo.golf.com as well, right? It's the website.
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. And we'll make sure that we put that in all the show notes for you guys. But definitely go over to Carlo's his Instagram, YouTube. There's some great stuff there. And you heard it from him. Figure out how to be honest with yourself in your golf game if you really want to get better. So, Carlo, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, man. Really appreciate you taking the time. And we look forward to probably having you on at some point down the line.
And you, Chris. See you later.